I've got my two side pieces bolted on now, so that can't move anymore. And now I've got this idea to stick in this box section. It's 4x2, 100 by 50. So I've just got resting on blocks for the moment, just to check things out. And I'm now toying with the idea of actually curving this piece. I think that'll look quite sexy, and it could sort of tie in with the curve that we see on the roof. And then the idea further is to stick in a section here and here and weld it onto the back end of the frame. So this will be actually where the frame stops, and then it will also create a very strong attachment point for these sections. And then I'm also toying with the idea of actually using some small round taillights and Frenching them into this section. I think that'll look quite cool. So that's my plan. Let's see how it turns out. Four discs later, and a total of 7.25 meters of cutting. I know because I calculated it. If you want to measure that in body parts, it's somewhere in the region of 24 feet. But now I can get my curve, and we all like curves, don't we? So this is going to be a stupid amount of welding, I know. But that's the forest engineering way. I can't think of any other method to get a curve in this box section. You need some real fancy equipment if you wanted to do it in another way. So this is what we're going to have to do. I've clamped it up so these cuts are now closed up. So I'm going to start by just giving it a light tack here on the end of each cut to keep that curve in place. Right, so I've got a tack on each cut. Now if you consider that each cut was only the thickness of the disc, which is about, one of these thin discs, it's only about 1 millimeter. But with all these cuts, that's how much curvature you get. That's actually quite amazing. So before I do any further welding, let's go try this thing for size and see how it looks. Yes, that looks a whole lot better than a straight piece, I think. Also thinking I actually want to curve it a little bit more here at the very end. And then we can make this round. And it can tie in very nicely into this upright section. So I'm going to cut these welds, maybe just 3 or 4 or 5 in this area. Open it up a little more. Bend it a little bit more, and you'll see what it looks like then. So I messed with it a little bit more, and now it kind of matches the curve of the roof. I did some extra cuts here towards the end, effectively enlarging those pie cuts, and now it's not a section of an arc anymore. It's got a bit of, what do you call it, compound curvature. And yes, I started laying down some welds as well, so I can get ahead on that too. It's going to be a lot of welding and grinding. Jeez, that was a fair amount of grinding, eh? I went down to the house for a break, and then my wifey managed to hold me down long enough to trim my beard a little bit. But I could escape before she could cut my goatee. So anyway, I wanted to weld this fully before I fit it on the truck, because all this welding will actually distort the whole beam a little bit and change that curve slightly. So I wanted to just have that done so that it can move as it wants to, and now I can go and fit it and see how to and what to do and how to do and all of that. Okay, something like this. This piece is going to be welded to the frame with a piece in there. So I can't weld this onto that. So I need to come up with a way to bolt this onto there. It's all still floppy as well. So we need to just set up things here to make it all work out. So what I'm going to do here is I've got this piece of flat bar. I drilled and tapped it. Also drilled some holes there. So this can go in there now. I can bolt it on. And then when I've got this piece of flat bar nicely bolted on here, I can weld the flat bar here on the inside to my curved piece. So I'm not going to weld this. And then I'll repeat it on this side, do a flat bar here as well. And then when all is said and done, I can still take this side piece off if I want to. And then this will stay as a part of the frame. And once all this is sorted out, I can cut this nicely, and I might even curve it like that. So I clamped these two rulers together to get this distance here. Now, I don't even know what that distance actually is, but I've essentially created a memory stick, and I can transfer that distance to the back here, so that I've got it the same. And then I clamped on this piece of flat bar just to temporarily help me hold things in place. Right, lots of clamps to help me hold things in place and line it all up. Now I can weld it in here. Gotta make myself narrow. Okie dokie. So I should be able to take everything off now. Well, the clamps, I mean. There we go, that's being held in place. Now, of course, it will still be floppy like that, because I now need to do these sections. So before I do anything else, let's just do a little bit of forward thinking here. When I add in these pieces and weld them in place, my bumper, let's call it a bumper, will become part of the frame. But I still want to trim it here and maybe add a round piece in there. I still want to French in some round taillights. It will be just easier to do that on the bench. So I'm not going to weld those sections in yet. I can still take this off by unbolting it here. So I think that's what I'm going to do. Take this piece off, take it to the bench, and then we can do all the rest of the detail work on this before I weld it to the frame. So I've got to cut some 76mm 3-inch holes here. And I don't have a hole saw this size. So I've got this idea that I want to try. I drill a hole there and I've cut myself a little plywood disc with a bolt. This diameter is less than the hole size by about half the diameter of my cutting nozzle. So now my idea is to use this as a guide and cut myself a nice hole. And then when that one is done, we can try the same here. Let's see how it works out. Right, let's see. Almost. Just gotta clean it up in a few spots. There we go, man. That worked really well. So this is the piece that came out of here, and if I turn it over, it gives me an opportunity to see on the inside. And here is one of my earlier welds, those pie-cut welds when I was curving this beam. And I welded it from the outside, and I can see some nice penetration here. So yes, I'm happy, those welds are all good. So before I weld my piece of pipe in here, I want to create a little landing, a little recessed landing in there for the attachment of my light. And this little block, I'm going to stick that in there. And my landing, shall we call it that, can go in there. Now I can weld that in place first. And that will provide a little landing or fastening point for my recessed taillight. I got my piece of flat bar welded in there. And now if I turn this around, I can drop in my taillight. Got a nice place to fasten it, and it's recessed. And I just realized I've never told you about these taillights. So I found them at my local auto parts store. They sell them as a LED marker light. The diameter is what? It might be 60mm or something, I don't know. It fits nicely inside this piece of 76mm pipe, 3 inches. You get them in orange and black as well. Not black, what am I talking about? Get them in orange and red as well. And I've used them before, they work really well. So I can now drop this in here. And once that's all lined up, I can weld it fully, grind it nicely, and then Bob's your uncle. So this piece of 50mm 2-inch pipe needs to go in here, but I just realized I've drilled the hole in the wrong spot. So I'm just going to re-drill it because I want my spacing nice. Right, so I was going to do this with the hole saw, but this new little trick of mine with the plywood disc actually works so well and much quicker, so I'm just going to do it again. A little bit of cleanup required. There we go. Akuko ukungena okunga gunazi wanga. My thoughts exactly. I am talking absolute nonsense. I have no idea what it means. I picked up this sign in a junkyard when I was sniffing around. No doubt in one of the black African languages. Maybe Professor Google will know what it means. I don't. But how's that last word, eh? Check the spelling and try saying it. Must surely rank as one of the longest words on our little planet. This is fun, I love it. I got this piece welded in as well. Then I spent some time with the grinders and the file to give it that sculpted look. But now why is this one smaller than these two? There's a little twist to the tail. So digging through my stash of treasures, I found a pair of these beauties. Just look at it. It's got a brass housing that I polished up a little bit. Glass lens with those little triangles on it. I don't know what you call that, prismatic lens. I'm not sure. But yeah, I've got no idea what this comes off. If you've got a clue, please let me know. I'd be very interested. But yeah, my plan is to now use this as a taillight. So I want to stick the fellow in here, like that. So yeah, in the two bigger openings, I'm going to stick my more modern versions. These LED marker lights. So that one will be the turn signal, or indicator as we say in South Africa. Then a red one here for my tail light. No, I'm talking nonsense. That's my tail light, for my brake light. So it's a little bit lacking because I've got the brass there but not here. So I'm just experimenting and I'm using a piece of brazing rod here. I think I need to find one with a bit more of a diameter, but this is just an experiment. So if I stick that in there, let me see if I can get it in here. Yes, something like that. That looks a lot better. That kind of works for me. I have no idea yet I'm going to keep that in place, but we'll figure out something down the line. Yes, man, I think this can work. I must just go find a thicker piece of brass brazing rod and make up my rings, and it will match better. Yeah, I dig it. And maybe scuff these lenses a little bit. They just shine maybe too much. So there's an overview of what we have so far. But yeah, just looking at it, I feel something is still lacking. And I'm sure those of you that know my style already can guess what it's going to be. And I've got so much time invested in this piece of metal already, I might as well do it. Jeez, I tell you, I'm such a sucker for punishment. I mean, what's wrong with me? But persistence pays off. It's now full of speed holes, and therefore it's officially faster than ever before. Let's go stick it on the truck and see what it's going to look like. Right, bolted in place, and I like it. Maybe too many holes for some, but it works for me. And once this newly fabricated piece and this section here is the same color, whether it's rusted or painted or whatever, then this edge, this line here, will be more visible. And I think it's a very sweet line. I love it. Now I want to connect my bumper, for lack of a better word, to the frame, so that effectively it will become part of the frame. And then I will be able to unbolt these side pieces. So I think I want to go from that bottom point up to here. And I've cut myself 2 pieces of hardboard, so I can adjust it to establish a template or a pattern for the piece that needs to go in here, because it needs to be this angled piece. So something like this. Can adjust it, tighten my clamp, and now I've established the piece I need to make. So I used my template to cut out this piece of box section, 50 by 76 or 2 by 3 inches. So now if all goes well, this should drop straight into place. Let's go check it out. I've got some wooden blocks down here to just hold it off the ground for me at the right height. So let's see. Yes sir, it looks pretty damn good. Yes, perfect. Don't like the sharp corner though. I mean, I've got curves here and pipes and rounds everywhere. So I've been playing with my bits of plywood again. Maybe I should, instead of just gusseting it, maybe I must fill it in completely here. In other words, make 2 of these from some plate and then cap it with some flat bar so that it looks like that in the end. I think that'll look quite cool. I scratched out some 3mm offcuts. I could make 2 of these. 3mm is 1/8 of an inch. That's the thickness, obviously. Now, I didn't actually quite have a big enough offcut piece, so I had to weld on it a little bit here to get my size. Now, yeah, I mean, that's the beauty of steel. You can patch together whatever you want. It does take a little bit of time, I suppose. But I didn't want to wait until I go to town again and buy some more materials. So why not? At least this way I'm using up all my scraps. Works for me. Who needs a fancy evolution saw if you've got a magic knife like me? Look here on the blade. Made in Sweden from laminated steel. Unfortunately, I can't quite make out the name there anymore. So definitely not a showpiece. But I tell you one thing, you'll have to go a long way to find a knife that can keep an edge like this one. It's worked hard in its life, cutting all sorts of things. I think I bought it, more than 25 years ago from a fishing co-op on a small island called St. Helena in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, of all places. I think it was originally meant as a fishing filleting knife or a fish filleting knife. I used to use it for the same purpose, but yeah, these days I use it for all sorts of things, as you've just seen. So now my plan is to just bend this piece until it fits that curve there. I'm just going to bend it here in the vise by hand, sort of hit and run until it kind of matches that curve. A little bit more on this side for sure. A little bit more there. I don't think so yet, but let's go give it a try. Right, let's see. Well, getting there, but a little bit more here in the middle. Let's give it a little bit of a tweak. Right there, maybe a tad more. Okay, it's looking a little bit better. Let's go try it again. A little bit too much now, but that's cool. I can tack it here and here. Then I can just pull the ends in. I'd rather have it overbent a little bit. Always works better. So for welding, I clamp this piece to the table, and then I press down on this so that it could all line up. And I've given it a tack in 2 spots where it touches. Still got that gap there, but now with it clamped in the vise, if I pull it like this, it closes up. So I can just give it a tack there. The camera lens is so close to this workpiece that I'm not going to tack it on screen if I can put it like that. So let me just quickly do this and then we're good to go. And yes, once I've got it tacked nicely on the inside, I will just actually grind open this seam here so that we can get some weld penetration. Tack together, so now I just can cut my excess. Okay, so all tacked up nicely, and I've cut my excess off. So you can see it's now sitting nice and square to the table. A fair bit of clamping going on here now. I want this piece to match up with the width of this piece. So I've got them both clamped to the bench so the bottom surfaces line up. And then I've also clamped this piece of angle bar across the top. So now my top piece can go in and it will line up the top surface, and then I'll just stick a clamp in here as well to hold it in place for me. Now it lines up nicely on both sides. Right, tack together again. I didn't want to flash you, so I saved you from that. Let's just take this apart then. And now my little piece, get my clamp out, come on. There we go. So I can now go and fit this wherever I need to. Right, so my new PC will then fit on like this. And then that vertical section of the frame will be here. So before I weld this all together, I just want to go check it again on the truck and make sure everything is sweet. So this chappy will drop in like that, and then this piece I just tack together will fit there. Yeah, it looks good. I think it's all going to work out well. Just looking at this business now, I think I might actually even put a curve in down there as well. Who knows? That'll only happen once I take this whole business apart to do all the underneath welding and painting and all of that. So it's going to be way down the line. I think for now what I'm going to do is to weld this piece to this piece on the bench. It will just be easier, and turn it into a unit, if we can call it that, and finish it all up. And then I can come and install it when it's all together, drop it in place, and finally weld everything together. So you're just going for a walk to look at the sheep while I grind those welds. I mean, that's like really, really boring stuff to watch. Right, so I got the grinding done on both of these pieces. So let's go stick them into place and see what they look like. So this piece is now going to drop in like that. Got to line it up a bit. But now I see that this whole back section is of course still movable. I need to find a way to center it before I can weld it on. Quite a bit of clamping going on here now. This straight edge is clamped to the front of the frame up there, and then also here to help me project the line of the frame backwards, if that makes any sense. So it will give me a point here now to center my back piece. I've got that clamped on, and then this line will also ensure that I can clamp my new piece in the correct spot. Here you can see the straight edge on the other side, so it's extending or projecting that line of the frame backwards. So now I know I can line up my new piece here and then also here, and then I know that it will all be in a line. And I've also got this clamped onto this here, so nothing can move now. And then finally I've got this bit of angle bar clamped on as well to help me line up these surfaces here. So I think everything is good. I can tack this whole business together. Well, it's not fully welded. It's just too painful to get in everywhere now. But there's enough to hold it in place. Down the line, when I take everything apart again and get the sides off and all the rest of it, I can weld it up fully. There's still a lot of outstanding welding, especially on the on the underside of the frame. But we'll take care of that down the line. And now I think of something. It's an important thing to remember in life. When you can laugh at yourself, you will always have something to laugh at. So that's the current view. Right up the ass. I love it, man. I'm a sucker for a sweet curve. And this one, matching the curve on the roof, it really works for me. I mean, everything in life that is beautiful has got sweet curves. Don't you agree? I think that's what's missing in modern cars. No more sweet curves. So I think on that curvy note, I'm going to call it a day. Man, I've still got a lot of work to do here. I don't know what I'm going to be doing next. I've got to think about a fuel tank. Not quite sure where I'm going to put that yet. I've got to do the fenders, fill in these side pieces, and on and on. But I'm going to take a break. Thanks for hanging out with me. I enjoyed it. I'll see you in the next video. Until then, have a lucky one.